what we do is inherently different, and it is inherently precious because of the scarcity of it. So our human limitation is actually what makes us better.
Hi everyone, this is Pierrick from P2design. It's been a while since I recorded a new interview with inspiring artists, and I'm super happy to be back at it with Nikolaos Finizio, an amazing animator specialized in 2D FX animation that worked on Klaus and Across the Spider-Verse, to name a few. I hope you will enjoy this interview. Here's a bit of self-promotion before we get started. If you want to learn animation, rigging and much more in Blender, discover my extensive courses on P2designacademy.com. Learn actual professional techniques or enjoy all my exclusive free character rigs only on P2designacademy.com. Without further ado, here is the interview. So hi Nick, how are you doing?
I'm good, hi Pierrick. Very nice to meet you.
Yeah, thank you. I'm super happy to have you too. I've seen a lot of your work, on pretty much like everything, Instagram and Twitter. So I wanted to talk to you like a while ago already. So could you introduce yourself for the people that doesn't know you already?
Sure. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. My name is Nikolaos Finizio. I'm a 2D animator, mainly specialized in 2D FX animation. And well, over the years, I've been lucky enough to work in fairly well-known projects, as Across the Spider-Verse, Klaus, The Mitchells versus the Machine, and stuff like that.
Awesome. So, where are you living right now?
I am based in Birmingham, UK, at the moment.
Okay. And where are you from?
I am actually originally, I'm half Greek, half Italian, but I mainly grew up in Italy.
Okay, so generally when I do interviews like that, I like to ask like quick warm-up questions. Mm-hmm. So I expect short answers, okay. And you can answer whatever you want. What's your favorite food?
Wow, moussaka.
Okay. What's your favorite color?
Wow, this is a very tough one, man.
Come on.
Red.
Okay, cool. Me too. Are you more digital or traditional?
Digital, did you say?
Digital or traditional?
Well, traditional, I would say, over the years.
Okay, cool. 2D or 3D?
2D, definitely.
Yeah, okay. Fire, water, or electricity?
Lava.
Okay, lava. Okay, cool, lava. Your favorite movie?
Oh man, this changes every other day.
Yeah, but the current favorite movie.
Well, let's say Akira.
Favorite show?
Man, these are tough questions. Maybe, I don't know, maybe Twin Peaks?
Okay. Favorite artist?
Okay. Well, maybe I'll say Mr. Aries at the moment, written okay. Aryz.
Finally, what's your favorite drink?
Well, I've been doing a lot of beer since I'm here.
Okay.
So currently beer.
Okay, cool. That's I enjoy the honest response, because generally people just say, oh, coffee or water,
Yeah, only honest answers, man.
Yeah. Okay, so a first big question. So how did you get into animations?
I guess I have a pretty unconventional path compared to most of my co-workers, colleagues that I've met during the years, because like most of the times I would be working in a studio and the people around me would be the kind of people that always dreamt of being an animator at Disney or something like that. Well, for me, I kind of arrived into animation through a very weird, convoluted road, because basically when I was like a teenager or a kid, what I really wanted to do was, and I assume this is a common thing with you, I wanted to be a musician. Basically, I was playing in a band. I was a bass player of a band, and I was sure I was going to be a rock star.
Okay.
So, but of course, like since I was a kid, I always loved to draw. I always liked cinema as well, but I never really thought of those things as, like a career. While, music career, rock career made more sense to me in my mind, obviously. you know. So then during the years, I started, doing graphics for the band, like covers or
Okay.
poster art, or little by little, I started, doing little videos, editing the actual videos, and maybe doing like little motion graphic pieces to go with them and stuff like that. So I realized, I started getting some interest from, other people, like, other friends who were playing in other bands and stuff like that. And, they were saying, oh, but can you do this for us too? Well, so I kind of realized in that moment how like that could actually be something I could, pay a rent with. And yeah, and it was like something that I really enjoyed doing. So basically I kept pushing in that direction, and obviously, um, uh, like putting together what like I had learned with, video editing and stuff like that with my passion for drawing. I Yeah, putting the two things together, I ended up, finally doing 2D animation. And like during at the very beginning, I started doing, like, I worked on whatever work was available. I would take it. For the first like couple of years at least, I did, mainly advertisement, but really whatever, from editing of stock clips to little motion graphic things, little by little, until I really started working in properly in animation with video games. Like I started
Okay.
working on for a video game studio in Milan. It was then called Forge Reply. I think the studio changed name in the meantime, but it was very fun because we were working on a 2D side-scrolling beat 'em up, like like the old school games
Yeah,
that
like
are like
Street of
2D.
Rage or something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like Metal Slug, but the
Okay.
the style was like dark fantasy. So it was a very very cool game. Actually, unfortunately, the project was cancelled before we could finish it, which happens every now and then. So that's fine. But yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's too bad because it would have been very cool. Anyway, for me, it was good because it gave me the opportunity to you know work on my first reel, basically, because all the work I did for that gig basically became my first show reel, with which I was able to then find other jobs and stuff like that. I think right afterwards I worked on another video game for a little while, and then little by little I transitioned into the actual like TV series animation, and then movies, which is I mean, I love video games, but I'm not a great gamer. I mostly enjoy the artistic side of video games.
Yeah, sure.
Well, movies is always been like something that I always enjoy, even just from the public perspective.
Okay. Yeah.
And the first big project in that sense that I worked for is Klaus, and then from then from that onwards is I've been you keep on doing movies, and then another movie, and then another movie, and yeah.
Yeah.
So that's it, and now
Okay.
here I am.
You didn't take specific class or
Oh well, actually,
to get
I
there?
forgot about that. I did do like but it was like a generic animation, like not really just animation, like more like animation design course, where basically I got the opportunity to basically take this more seriously for like a year, or a little less than a year, I think, and focus on that, and then start from there.
Now I'd like to focus a bit on the craft. Why VFX instead of character animations or environment? What put you on the tracks of VFX?
It's one of the in many situations I feel like I've been lucky, in the sense that my natural inclination fell together with like something that was a market request of the time. Because when I started, so first of all, when I started 2D was dead. Like everybody was telling me, oh, like I wanted to do 2D animation because I like to draw and stuff like that, and also that came a lot easier to me than all the technicalities of a rig or the more specifically digital aspects of animation. So I always like knew that I wanted to do that, but most people would tell me, oh, you should really study 3D because nobody's working with 2D anymore, right? And even more specifically, 2D effects was not even like most people didn't even knew that 2D effects was a job, back in the day. Actually, I do remember there was also a lot of confusion even on the specific term. Like now we call it 2D effects, but then like a lot of people would say 2D VFX or FX animation, like written like with the actual word, so like even that created that sort of moment where like that it was something that if you knew that it existed, it was cool and you loved it, but otherwise like it would have been difficult for you to stumble upon it basically. And so I actually think that my first job, the video game studio that I was talking about earlier, I do think that one of the main reasons why they hired me is because when the guy called me, the art director called me, he like the first question was like, do you know what 2D effects animation is? And I was like, yes. Hired.
Cool.
Basically, I love doing character animation too, but the kind of style that I like to draw, which is maybe not really like I don't enjoy very much like around the cute characters and stuff like that. I mean, nothing wrong with that, of course, but like it's just not my natural stylistic choice. And so while on the other hand there was a big request for effects, like the first thing they would ask was like for them to be more like aggressive and kind of pointy and sharp designs and stuff like that. And that is what like naturally what comes natural for me in terms of drawing. So I just always felt that it was easier for me to just do to do effects rather than I have to learn another style and stuff like that. That's at the beginning. But also the cool thing about 2D effects is that most of the times, 99.9% of the time, basically you create your own design. So even in a big production, you can still work within your style most of the times. While with character animation, you like the skill of the character animator is in the performance, right? But stylistically, you need to be able to be like to mimic the style of the production, obviously.
The style sheets,
So I think I was probably more interested in the stylization itself in that moment, and now it's over the years I eventually decided to try doing some professional character animation too. I actually did some character animation shots on the Netflix show Love, Death and Robots.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a super cool experience. But I still think my main love is to the FX animation.
Okay.
Or also recently I started doing other things where I am actually like designing the whole thing from from the storyboard to completion, and then in that situation then it's cool to have a hand on all the elements.
When you do 2D FX animation, when do you get involved on the project?
Well, it varies a lot. But me personally, on Klaus, I arrived on the production a little later. I think it was by the time the actual shot work was starting. All the pre-production work was mostly done by that point. The nice thing about working with effects is that most of the time, even the biggest production won't have like a very specific pre-production on effects, right? Basically, you do the pre-production when you start production, right? So maybe you have a couple of even more than some, like a range of concept art paintings, but then from that you have to derive the actual asset that you can use in production, and the movement and the behavior of the effects and stuff like that. So normally when I like right now in the recent projects, I normally am involved at the beginning when they start thinking how to approach the styles, the 2D effects to put in production. And then my main task for the beginning, for the first big chunk of the project, is let's test stuff and see what works better in 2D, what works better in 3D, how can we combine both, how can we achieve the style, or what is that the directors want from this effect, or stuff like that. Like that was the case for Spider-Verse, for example. And it was that show specifically is very there is a huge style variety within the show, which meant that we had a lot of testing to do before actually going into the shot per shot work. And that's generally the most fun part of working in a show, when you are more free to just experiment, and sometimes you find things that you wouldn't have thought otherwise.
Okay, what software do you use most of the time? Because now we see more and more shows and movies mixing 3D with a kind of traditional style like Arcane or like the Spider-Verse.
Most of the time I am doing the 2D part only, which means, well, these days I mainly work with Boom Harmony, but it's traditional animation anyway, so the technique, every kind of software that allows you to draw with a timeline frame per frame is good for that kind of job. So you can use like a lot. I know a lot of French guys love TV Paint, for instance, and that's a fantastic software too. But there's so many. There is some super cool stuff happening with Blender recently. In this kind of shows, I feel like we are trying to get to the aesthetic and put that into the 3D world, right? So the technique itself is still like the traditional 2D technique,
Okay, so they pre-render the shot and then you draw on screen, and then they kind of compose it or combine it?
Yeah, well, yeah, depending on the shot, yeah, like that's one of the case scenario. If you have a complex camera movement, you would probably have to bake it first and then animate on top of it. But then you can also decide to use to place the 2D effects on a card.
Yeah,
like we had some elements, like for instance in the Spider-Verse movie, most of the 2D effects stuff is shot specific, so animated on top of the baked camera. But we even had some elements that are like just library elements, and then the 3D artist would place like for instance my favorite example is the droplets. I don't know if you watched the movie, but there is a big chunk of the movie at the end towards the end where there are a lot of rainy shots in the city, and we see a lot of buildings with all the we see the droplets falling from the windows, and those are 2D animated. I animated like a little library of droplets falling, and then they placed those into the various shots.
What do you believe bring back 2D FX animation to movies, basically? Because like 10 years ago it was all CG, all 3D, and pushing the kind of trying to push the technology as far as possible. And for the last 5 years, we are slowly getting back to more traditional visuals.
I guess maybe one of the answers is that in a way now CG has reached photorealism, right? So while before the push toward realism was, okay, let's let's get to reality, right? Let's get to a point where we're able to emulate reality completely. Now, after we reach that point, we're like, all right, now the next step logically is, okay, let's go with expressionistic solutions now. Like that's the it's a similar path to what traditional arts have done in a way. Like when the shift from in traditional painting, from trying to achieve photorealism with paintings, or okay, now let's look at something else. Let's go, abstract or whatever. It's a similar. But at that point, one of the factors that pushed that change at the time was probably the invention of photography, right? Which in a way made the research for the quest for photorealism redundant in a way.
Yeah.
So it's probably a similar thing now, right? Where we got to reality, now we want more. You know what I mean?
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with that. Now, as an artist, have you been mostly freelancing, or have you been part of like companies for those movies?
I did both. I've been now freelancing for a while. Well, in the last couple of years, to be honest, I've been freelancing with a steady client. So it's like almost like being in an half and half situation actually. But I can say I think there are pros and cons, different pros and cons to each situation. Like when you're a freelancer, you get to choose your own projects, and you get to choose your own time. How to spend your own time. On the other hand, when you are employed, you don't have to worry about the next gig.
Yeah. And how do you choose projects, if you do choose them?
Yeah. I do. I do, luckily. And well, recently, I mean, not there is a point when you are like chasing projects, and then after a little while you get to choose them a little more, let's say. Obviously, Spider-Verse, for instance, was something that I was really interested in, because I watched the first one, and I was blown away by the leap forward that they were able to make stylistically in such a mainstream project. That was the real stylistic shift from what now we call the average CG look, and which can also be super good, but still, like it was a point where that look was a little bit seen in a way.
Yeah.
And now with that, that was a big leap forward, and so I was really interested in contribute to the next chapter of that evolution, hopefully. And normally, that's the one thing that I look for if there is something challenging stylistically, or if I know that maybe sometimes it's because I like the creators that are involved in the project. Like for instance, another movie I was very happy to work with that came out recently is called Apollo 10.5. And it's an animated movie by this director whose work I love. He's the guy who did Ascarna Darkly or Waking Life, but he's mostly known for his live action movies.
Okay.
And I knew that he was going to do another animated movie, and so in that case I had such respect for his work that that's the reason why I chose that project. So it's always something like that. I try to, if it's something interesting and cool, that can be cool stylistically or maybe narratively or something like that, I'm always happy to try and give my contribution to the project.
Okay, cool. What do you think about the future of 2D FX animation? We can see a lot of young artists kind of diving in it, which is great. I love it.
Well, that's a good question, and I don't know if my point of view is a good one to give a a good answer to this question, because the thing is, when I started, again, like there were no, like, we were like 4 or 5 guys maybe in all Europe doing 2D effects animation. Now every time I'm I don't know, on LinkedIn or Instagram, I see a young, like a student guy saying, I would like to be a 2D effects animator, which is great, because, like, in a way, it means that the technique is going to be better with more people involved in it, and the craft is going to evolve, and that's great. Maybe we will reach a point at in some moment we will reach the point where, okay, this is the new standard now, and we need to break away from that once again. I don't know if we're close to that point, because still, like, what we are doing now in terms of 2D effects animation is something different from what used to be 2D effects animation in the 90s, for instance, when the latest, the last 2D blockbuster movies came out. So I think now we are still, like, evolving the craft in a way, still trying and still experimenting stuff. Like you, I guess I'm curious to see where this will bring us.
Yeah, cool. I have a tricky one. Do you have any take on AI?
Well, I was kind of expecting this question, to be honest, obviously. And so the thing is, I'm not the most eloquent person to talk about the topic, and it's such a complicated and long topic. There are so many things to say about it that I'm sure I will miss something, or will say something imprecise. But let's try.
Doesn't matter.
There are like several levels to this discussion. So the first one is the existential level, what this means, for us human artists and stuff. And in that sense, I don't feel, and I don't think that human artists should feel the existential threat, because what we do is inherently different, and it is inherently precious because of the scarcity of it. So our human limitation is actually what makes us better to this technology by definition. I think that we as humans consume art not because of it is a commodity, So I've never heard anyone say, "Oh, I like that artist because it's so fast," The art is produced so fast. It's so, there's so much of it, So basically, what we like about artists is like the kind of connection that you create with like an artist that you follow, and that the thing that you can follow, like you can kind of open a window and see what his mind looks like, and I think that is the real value that we associate to that activity, right? The communication of the human experience between humans, right? Because you could say to this point, yeah, but if you could, like, okay, you find one style and then you have a technology that reproduces infinite variations of that, how is that different from what you are describing? But the thing is, I also think that the actual process of creating it is what creates the link between us, public, and the artist.
Yeah.
I always think of this the story of the famous magician Harry Houdini. He was a famous escape artist, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And his trick was, like, basically it was like constricted with a suit and like all bound, and basically they would put a curtain in front of him, and he would be able to escape from his chains and go outside of the curtain, and the public would go, that was the trick, basically. But once it just happened that the curtains were not functioning, so basically he did the trick while the public could see him, get out of the chains and stuff, and he realized in that moment that he got a way bigger reaction to the trick when the people could see, the process of him. escaping, right?
Okay.
And so that became the new trick, and it became a way more famous and way more successful trick than before. And I think it's a similar thing, like in we definitely live in the era of performances, right? Where everything is like every you can everyone films his own screen and put we never had this much access to the process of people than we have now. But I do think that is like even without seeing it, knowing that there is a process that a person went through to create something is what links us to that thing even more.
Yeah, I believe people are still attached to the craft.
Yeah, then there is obviously there's the other level of the discussion is obviously copyright and all that kind of stuff, and there is legislation is slowly going forward in that sense. And I do think that whatever you think of the technology it needs to be regulated in these terms in order to function in our society. The only other thing is that I realize, so the thing is, I'm sure there are a lot of ways in which this technology can be very useful and great for everybody, right? But at the same time, I remember early on when the first Mid-Journeys and DALL-E were coming out and stuff, and there was a lot of buzz around it and stuff. I like many other people, I applied for to have the access to do the tests and stuff like that. And I remember thinking, okay, cool. Like I received the email back saying, yeah, you can happy testing or something like that. I remember, and I thought, okay, maybe I'll wait for a good idea to test this stuff, and then I'll start the testings, right? But then I realized that every time I had a good idea,
you wanted to do it by hand, right?
Yeah, I wanted to throw it myself, right? Like it's like I kind of prefer it to just throw it, I think the real what we might lose is if we just decide that we can use this technology as a brainstorming machine, because what you're doing is actually you are reducing the quality of the brainstorming by not knowing the source that you're taking from is drastically reducing the meaning of what you are taking from, right?
Yeah.
I guess that is where most of the fears come from, when like this kind of changes changes the focus from, okay, it's not like we're not thinking anymore, we're just executing this, right?
Yeah.
While of course there's plenty of stuff that you can automate and benefit artists, but that's not what those tools were used for at the beginning, at least.
Do you have any routine or something to for your self-improvement, for your balance between your professional life and your life?
Well, not really. Recently, in the latest years, I started actually working, taking more or less doing kind of office hours just to be on the same speed as the world around me, because when you start freelancing and you feel like you always have to hustle and be get all the jobs, get all the better jobs, and so you work 30 hours every day. You invent hours that are not there just so that you can work in them. I'm exaggerating, but I think with time I managed to still be as productive, but while having a normal rhythm, somewhat normal rhythm.
Yeah, a more balanced life.
Yeah.
So
and in terms of growth, as in artistic growth, I always like everybody. I think I always have projects and stuff in my mind that I'm constantly trying to work on and make time for, and I guess those are the main engine towards me like learning new stuff and improving on things that I wouldn't maybe have other occasions to try.
Okay. And do you practice any other techniques like 3D, for example?
Yeah, well, not. I mean, not to like just enough so that I can communicate with the people around me.
Okay. Okay.
Like I have a basic knowledge of like 3D effects and some 3D softwares, but it's mostly I use them for some things in my own on my own work. But yeah, like I normally just have to be able to know what I'm talking about, basically.
Yeah, I got you. Did you ever try Blender?
Yeah, yeah. Actually, that is the one that I enjoy the most because, well, I do a lot of like character design stuff on there because you can draw in 3D, and just turn the head of your character and have a pretty fast like previews of what you are thinking.
Okay, so you've been using Grease Pencil, I
Yeah.
guess. Okay.
Yeah.
Enjoying
I
it?
try but yeah, the thing is, you never have enough time to do all the stuff that you want to do. But I started like testing some animation stuff with that too, but I never really went very forward with it. But yeah, it's something I want to go back to at some point for sure.
Yeah. I know that some people that were on Klaus are working on the development of Grease Pencil and its improvements. So if you were to start over again, would you have any advice for yourself?
That's another tough question. I mean, I've been, I can't complain. So I would say just, take some breaks every now and then. But other than that, it's been good. So, like, yeah.
Cool. And do you have any advices for 2D FX animation wannabe?
To the effects specifically.
Like 2D animators, because it has become pretty niche, I believe, compared to 3D animation.
Yeah, that's true. That's the one thing. So, I mean, of course, I can say specifically into the effects animation, a very very important thing that I see sometimes being like kind of overlooked is the shape design. Is always, of course, like a very very important thing, and is the first thing that everybody will judge your showreel from. But other than that, I would say the real important thing is like try not to be only focused on the effects animation, because basically if you want to do effects animation in a big production, you also need to know very well perspective. You need to know very well physics of elements and stuff like that. But in order to make stuff work with a camera, so in depth and stuff like that. So the more you can look and study at any, it's basically just drawing, right? So the more you can study the craft of drawing, the better, really.
Yeah, definitely. How can a young artist can stand out today? What do you think about basically like social media and stuff? You use them, so do you think that they are important to land a job today?
They are ever changing. So they used to be very important. Meaning that I remember getting several jobs from there, and I know for a fact a lot of my colleagues did the same. They got a lot of jobs because they had this massive exposure on social media. But now, like, those things also have a life of their own. Like sometimes the algorithms or whatever can change, and it's if you invested a lot of time and energy into that thing, it's still something that you don't really own 100%. It definitely is important to be there, but it's not the only important thing, obviously. In terms of what stands out, I'd say, well, obviously a good technique will make you stand out, but a more like a peculiar style is what really maybe truly makes the difference. If you want to, like, that depends. It depends what is your goal. If you want to be an animator in a production, then definitely you have to show off your technique. But if you want to be like an author, or have a more authorial path where you do your own short movies, or I don't know, and you want to be an illustrator or something, then the focus is, the style and how unique or personal that style can be.
Okay, cool. I think we're getting close to the end.
Nice.
So, do you have like any final words for the people watching this interview?
Well, thank you very much. It's been very fun to have this chat, and thanks for listening. If you made it this far, thank you so much.
Cool. Thank you so much, Nick, and I hope I can see some of your new works. Do you have anything going on, like a new project you can talk about before we wrap this up?
Yeah. Well, I am working on a new movie at the moment, and where I am again, we just started, so I am still working on the visual development of the effects stuff. But then I always have like 3 or 4 personal projects that are almost there,
Yeah, okay.
Working them on the side. So hopefully I'll have some of them out within the year as well.
Okay, cool. So we'll have a look to your Instagram and your X/Twitter account.
Yeah, we can't say Twitter anymore.
Yeah, okay, so X. Thank you so much for being a part of this, and I'm looking forward to see what you're going to do.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, my pleasure. See you.